This is Billy Daniel Bunter back for another episode of the Rave Story TV. And I have got, I don't care if he likes it, I'm going to say this. I think when it comes to the East London rave, pirate radio scene, the whole like warehouse vibe, Ellis Dee for me was the first superstar DJ of the rave underground. His name used to beat out from Sunrise when you see the Ellis Dee name on a flyer. Like, this man was like Ellis Dee. And I've got him in the hot seat. Royston,
Thank you very much.
Mate. I love you.
No, that was an intro, wasn't it? Which camera on? That one?
Whatever camera you want. That one.
That one, yeah. No, thanks for the intro, mate. I did hear you say that on one of your podcasts, and I thought, well, thank you very much for that. That was nice. And I thought, yeah, no, he's right. No, you know me, I'm not like that.
No, you're not like that.
But honestly, I just thought, yeah, thanks for that. I'll take that one. Thank you. Because others were there. You know, I mean, you were there yourself.
I was way after you, a couple of years.
No, I don't think it was that long, to be quite honest.
Yeah,
I don't think so. But yeah, it's. And I was going to say I was in the right place at the right time, like we just spoke about. But
I don't think it's as easy as that. That's easy to say.
Well, yeah. Well, it's better than not being there at the right time, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Because it's. But I mean, I remember, because like most of us, and probably not a lot of people know this, but most of us that DJs in the scene, you know, even before we were recognised in the scene, we were doing some kind of DJing anyway. I mean, I'd kind of forgotten that in primary school, in Assemblies, we used to, and this is a school called Rushmore in Hackney, in Assemblies in junior school, we used to have, there was a record player, and there'd be two lads just sitting like this, you know, and then the headmaster would give the guy the nod, and he'd put the record on. I thought, oh, I want that job. I want that job. And
what year? What year was that?
Oh, I'm going to primary school. Primary school. I mean, it was some kind of it wasn't dance music, obviously, or anything. But I wanted that job of putting the needle on the record, you know. And I ended up getting it. So that was probably my first, entry into the world of DJing there. And like I said, like all of us, I mean, I used to do people's house parties in and around Hackney. If anyone wanted or any of our mates were having a party, me and my friend Barry G, RIP, we'd be doing the music at these people's parties. But it was in those days where you'd have to lift boxes, you'd have to bring records, you know, you have to bring the whole kind of shooting match, really. But most of us have done that, you know, before anyone had ever heard of, you know, the acid house scene or anything like that. Because I think people just think, oh, you know, the acid house scene was there, and then all of a sudden we decided to become DJs. But most of us were doing music of some sort before that. Yeah,
was you into your soul, your funk, your reggae? Yeah.
Well, first it was reggae, to be quite honest. And you know, me and Barry G, we had our little soul sound. It was like Rima soul sound, but we'd play reggae as well, and stuff like that. Then I kind of went off the reggae a little bit and went into rare groove, soul, funk, and stuff like that. And stupidly, I gave all my reggae records, right, and I had tons of them. I gave them all to my mate. I just gave them all away. And, you know, that was one of the things that I regretted over the years.
Wow. So you acquired a reggae collection and gave it away.
I know, go on, chin me now.
Yeah. I'm not impressed with that.
No.
But I won't rub it in.
No, you just remind me every time you see me now.
What was Hackney like in that era before Rave and you? What year was you born, sorry?
63.
63.
Way back in the Stone Age.
Yeah. So what was Hackney like growing up? And
loved Hackney, loved it. You know, it was great. Everything was great back in those days, really. But mind you, we didn't have all the bills that we have and everything that we have nowadays. You know, and I mean, I don't think life was as tough as it is now. You know, like I said, we didn't have bills to pay at that young age. You know, we was just out enjoying ourselves all the time. And so I don't really know how it was for our parents, but I can't see it being as bad as or as stressful as it is for parents nowadays.
Was you a good kid growing up in Hackney?
I was. It's kind of weird because I did get in quite a bit of trouble when I was younger, but I was always a respectful kid.
Right.
I wouldn't. I was respectful, even though I was a little bit naughty. I was always respectful, kind of thing, and I wasn't just. And I think most kids were back then. You know, it's the world's a changing place, isn't it? You know, and you know we're talking about the late 70s and stuff like that, and it was just a different world there. But no, I loved growing up in Hackney.
Yeah. So when you was doing like house parties and doing your music, because Barry G's a name that was on loads of flyers reviewing like 88, 89.
Yeah. Well, it was Barry that got me onto Sunrise Radio.
Right.
Me and Barry, we would kind of always fall out, kind of like the stuff we was talking about earlier on. But, you know, we were best mates. Barry used to walk me to school when I was a kid. You know, he was always a couple of years older than me. But he would walk me to school as a kid, you know, and my family loved him. And, you know, we grew up, and I remember we'd make double decks out of just one record player, get the front of an amplifier, put it in there, and then, you know, there's no crossfader in those days. Yeah. So what you had to do is you'd play one record and then switch it over from, say, aux 1 to deck or something, just by pulling the volume down. But we made our own double decks and stuff like that, you know.
Did you used to go record shopping together?
Yeah. And the thing with me and Barry, what we would do is we'd always try and outdo each other with a record, right? So, like, you know, I'd go record shopping, and I always remember one. It was a tune by the OJs, "Put Our Heads Together," right? Yeah. And I bought that. It was on an album, and I remember going down to Barry came to my house, and I said, "Listen to this one." And we put it on. And me and him would always have like dancing competitions in my bedroom. You know, one of the kind of mates where it doesn't matter whether you make yourself look stupid in front of or not. And it was like that. And we would just wear ourselves out dancing in my bedroom, you know.
Was you a good dancer?
Not bad. I think I can hold my own for
an
old...
They called it cut a rug back in the day, didn't they?
I think I can hold my own for an old white guy, I think.
Yeah. Do you ever have a little dance behind the decks? Or do you ever get in and you and the wife have a little dance and you say, look at this, look how I used to dance back in the day?
No, I think she said, you know, every now and then, you know, I don't do it all the time, but every now and then at gigs, you might just find me down the front having a little dance.
Hang on a minute. Yeah. Jay Cunning's 50th. Jay Cunning's 50th. Okay. I was DJing and there you was in front of the decks.
Yeah. Yeah. You know,
I
don't mind a little dance. I really don't.
It's Fred Astaire here. Have a look at this.
I love it.
So you and Barry, because Barry G, I just remember his name on like Dungeons, Labyrinth, so many flyers. His name was like
he's like I say, he was on Sunrise Radio before me, and we'd kind of split up. We'd had some kind of argument. I don't know what it was, but you know. But then we ended up coming together. By that time, I was already doing not mega parties, but I'd done. Rave at the Cave, as you know, we started that off, and then, you know, other people started asking for me to play at their
everywhere,
dues. So, but it was only small at the first. Then he got me. He said, "Look, why don't you come on the radio with me?" And we kind of used to do a one set together, you know. So it was 2 hours, and we'd both play it. So it was Barry that got me onto the radio.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you say you was doing house parties around Hackney, like late 70s, early 80s.
That's right, yeah.
What before the acid scene?
Yeah.
I got two questions. What jobs were you doing?
Oh,
what was Royce and Ellis D doing? And was you playing any clubs or pubs around the East End, as well as the house parties?
Well, at the house parties was when I was about 15.
Right.
So it was just like people's house parties and stuff like that. So there was no clubs or anything like that. but that was mainly kind of just like reggae, a little bit of dub, all the rare groove kind of stuff and funk, that kind of stuff. But yeah, no clubs at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Because around the East End there was a lot of like clubs like Septembers and all that. So remember all them and Metropolis and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think at that point, I wasn't. Oh, I see. You know what it's like. It's so hazy back then.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? All those years ago. But I do remember Septembers and that there was like posers clubs, weren't there? If I remember right. Yeah. No, I don't even think I went to any of those clubs. Where we used to, when I kind of, after all the house party thing, and it was like, all right, let's go out clubbing. You always used, because everyone had cars then, and we'd rather than stay in London, we would go out and venture out into different clubs outside of London, I remember we used to go to a club in Harlow, and people go to me, "Oh, where are you going tonight?" We go, "Oh, we're raving in the countryside, man, Harlow."
Harlow's the country.
But in those days, Harlow was quite a long, it was out in the country compared to now. Everything's just got smaller.
What made you go to Harlow? No one really goes to Harlow, do they?
There used to be a club
in Harlow.
There used to be a club there called Whispers in Harlow that used to be pretty good back in the day. And we used to go there for quite a period going there. But yeah, we would go to different all around. Remember, we used to go to one in Luton. I think it was called the Pink Elephant or Pink Toothbrush or something like that. But yeah, we would not really normally stay in London. Really,
and,
we'd be
and what kind of musics were there? Were them places playing?
It was kind of soul funk.
And what was you doing as a job at that time?
Kind of just after I left school, it was what was it? First kind of job was like I was in doing cars. I just got a job in a gearbox factory, reconditioning gearboxes. Then I went into floor laying, done a bit of floor laying for a while. Then I kind of wasn't around for a little while, and then I kind of got into the motor trade for quite a while, and probably done that for probably what would it have been, maybe 8-9 years. Then just before the kind of the acid house kind of scene started, I was I started off as a courier working for this firm down in the city, and then all of a sudden they opened up a chauffeur inside. Okay. And they said, "Oh, do you fancy being a chauffeur?" Because I knew my way around London and everywhere like that. So, well, okay then. So they've given me the full suit and everything, the hat, and a big like Rover 3.5. You remember the old big one, the SDI, one of those with a phone in. But the thing is, they didn't have many customers at first because I was just starting it up, and so I'm supposed to be down like the West End and stuff like that, but I'm back in Hackney smoking weed with my mates, right? All of a sudden the phone goes and they go, "Mr. Parker's coming out of Park Lane in 5 minutes." I was like, okay, then. Shit. Stuck the phone down, dumped my mates and flew back to the West End. Obviously the phone kept ringing. They're going, "Where are you?" I said, "Oh, the traffic wardens have moved me on and stuff like that." But I do remember having my mate in the boot once of the car. Right. And taking a customer in, and I thought, please don't come out with any luggage,
Well, you said,
chauffeur.
Right, you said that you was away for a little while.
Yeah. Well, it weren't bad stuff. It was like nicking cars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I ended up doing Borstal training, which, to be quite, I was one of the last Borstal boys, but I loved it. It was. The place I went to was a place called Finnemore Wood, which is down in Marlow, which is a beautiful little town. If I don't know if you know it, and it was open. If you don't have any sex offences, no drugs, no violence, then you can go to an open thing. So there wasn't even a lock on the door, but it was absolutely brilliant, And they used to take us to college every day, just drop us off in a normal college, 6 of us. and then pick us up at like 4 or 5 o'clock. And absolutely brilliant, honestly. And I got City and Guilds there, come out of there, and I thought, do you know what? I had enough of that game, and went to this garage in Hackney that I knew employed anyone, and just said, look, I want a job. He said, you won't like it. I said, why not? He said, the wages. I said, what is it? He said, £30 a week. I went, what's the hours? He went, all hours. I went, all right, I'll take it. And that was it. And I got back into the kind of cars again.
What year was that?
That probably would have been about 84 maybe.
Right.
85. Yeah. No, it was early. It was probably earlier than that, because we started Elephant and Castle in '88. I'd been a kind of courier driver and chauffeur for probably 3 years, something like that. So just been 3 years, but yeah, about 84.
84.
Yeah.
When did you first hear house music? When did you first hear house music?
I think probably something like, what was the Colonel Abraham's tune or something?
No, he had a few different tunes, didn't he, Colonel Abraham's?
Yeah.
That people cite as like house. Obviously, Trapped is a big tune, but he had a few tunes like Music Is the Answer and that.
Yeah.
That many people kind of cited as like early house with like with real drum beats and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think that was it. I always remember, and I was fully into soul, funk, rare groove when I remember hearing acid music on the radio, and I thought, what is that fucking shit? Honestly, I honestly, I thought this is a joke. This stuff. I thought this is just rubbish. I thought, who listens to that shit?
Yeah, not for you.
And I knew these printer guys that worked down the city, and they went, "Oh, listen, you need to come out to this club with us, blah blah blah, da da da," which was Heaven, right? Or sorry, not Heaven. It was a Sound Shaft then.
Yeah,
the little bit,
the one at the back of Heaven. Yeah,
and we went down there, and they gave me something which I took, and all of a sudden the music, it just clicked, and I thought, right,
acid made sense.
That is what it's all about. And I always remember the first record, because we'd done the thing before we went in, and it was, remember a DJ called Vicky Edwards?
I know the name, Vicky Edwards.
Vicky Edwards, if you're listening, big up. I think she's out in Australia now. But there was like Vicky Edwards, DJ. I don't know if you remember DJ Louise.
I know all the names. Yeah.
And but I always remember walking in, and Vicky Edwards was playing Oochie Coochie.
What Baby Fool?
Yeah, and that bass, boom, 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 and I was just blown away by it, and all of a sudden it all made sense.
It all made sense.
Yeah,
getting
it was no longer shit anymore.
Yeah, getting on a little fella, listening to Oochie Coochie, and off you was.
Yeah, baptism of fire.
So what, like, before you went Sunrise and before you had that Oochie Coochie moment, what like pirate stations were you listening to?
It was stuff like LWR. All your Froggies and stuff like that. What was the name of the radio stations? I mean, you obviously had Kiss when it was illegal.
Yeah.
Because there was a few of them, and I think sometimes they just changed the name because it seemed like the same DJs
were changing their names when
on this new station just to maybe hoodwink the DTI or something. No, that wasn't us. That was someone else.
And what record shops around your area did you go to?
There wasn't many. There was really only Wired for Sound in Hackney.
Yeah, wicked shop.
Yeah. That was big up Brian and Susie. I don't think there was too many in Hackney, if I remember right. But you know what it was like in those days. You would just go all over the place.
Yeah, of course.
Hunting for what that last record shop didn't have, know. So the rounds, City Sounds. I'll tell you a story about City Sounds. Black Market, Groove.
I love Groove Records and Music Power. My favourites of all time.
What was the one that was down by Finsbury Park?
Finsbury Park.
Yeah.
Well, you had in Haringey.
What's Stan and Clive? That rings a bell.
Finsbury Park.
Yeah.
Obviously, in Haringey there was Music Power, but Finsbury. No, sorry. Finsbury Park, Seven Sisters Body Music.
Right. Yeah. There is that one, but
yeah,
no, this was another
right.
one. That, do you know where Finsbury Park Tavern is? Right by the. You come along. You got the hotels on the left,
Right.
and you got the park on the right.
Yeah.
As you come down to that junction, right there, the traffic lights. There's a big pub on the right hand side. Just used to be there.
Right.
Yeah, it was a little one tuck, just chucked.
And you was getting house and acid and.
Yeah, they weren't like one of the main shops that you would go to, but you know what it's like when you in those days when you wanted
if you found a shop and one that you liked, and you was hunting.
Yeah, you know, or you phoned up J.R. Hartley, do you have it?
Yeah.
And if they had it, you know, you're going there to get it, you know.
Wow. Do you know what? I'm pretty geeky with record shops. So
yeah.
You've stumped me there. Roy, from popping your first little fella, Hoochie Coochie, how long before you was playing? Did Sunrise come first, or you playing at acid parties first?
Sunrise Radio, you mean?
Yeah.
No, I was playing it because we done Elephant and Castle, didn't we? That was kind of my first introduction as DJing, and I always remember because the way it started, we knew someone that had a railway arch garage over in Elephant and Castle. Our friend worked there, and so we said, "Oh, ask your boss, can we have a acid party in her garage?" And she said, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, take me out to one." So we took her out to one, and in those days, you know what it was like. You'd be out, although you went with your mates, you're in the club. You'd be all over the place just chatting to anyone. Then all of a sudden, my mates come over. They goes, "Quick, Roy, come over." I said, "What's the matter?" And they've gone, "Well, someone's given Karen an E, right?" And it's not taken too well to her. She was underneath this like UV light, and she was kind of like, a bit like that, and she wasn't looking the best, you know. And I thought, that's it, we're done. We're you know, there's no chance. Spoke to her on the Monday, and she said, "Oh, I loved it. Yeah, let's do it." And so we cleared this garage out, but there was a big lorry in there, right, a flatbed lorry, and it was too heavy to push, so we left it in there, and people just jumped on the back of the lorry, and that was like a feature of it. People would get there early to reserve their space on the lorry to dance.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when did that was Rave in the Cave, wasn't it? When did you start that? What was the month?
Probably November '88.
So
it was later part of '88.
November '88. And when you say we, who's we?
So there was myself, partnered with a guy called Charlie Appley. He always says I never mention him, so if he sees it, I've mentioned you quite a few times. So yeah, Charlie. There was Karen and then husband. So there was Karen and her husband as one set of partners, and me and Charlie as the other. But that was where I met Chalky White, the DJ.
Chalky White and not Chalky White, the MC.
Yeah. So it was the first night. We started at 12 and we went through, I think it was either 6 or 7, but I played all night. But I remember, and I'd only bought about 120 quid's worth of records. I didn't really have any records, but I just went and bought a load. I was playing A-sides, B-sides, the A-side again and B-side again, but it went really well. But during the night, early, Chalky came up and he said, "Oh, hello, mate." He said, I'm a DJ. Any chance I can? I went like, "No, I'm the DJ here, mate."
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mate, come 7 o'clock that morning, I tell you, could have been playing all night. Right? I was absolutely knackered. And then the strategy for us then was, right, the police might think we're going to do next week. So we left next week out and we done the other week after that, right, to try and, you know, minimise any police attraction. and then we kind of messed it about. We'd do one the next week after that and then maybe not do one for 3 weeks and stuff like that, you know. But I thought, I hope that guy comes back again. And on the second one he came back. He went, "Oh, any chance?" I went, "Have you got your records?" He said, "Yeah." I went, "You're on."
Yeah.
And that was it. It was just a partnership between me and him.
How many people will go into that?
Well, at first, the first one we probably got, realistically, maybe 350, something like that. And this is old railway arch, quite a big railway arch. But we'd noticed up in the left-hand corner, there was a bit of a void space. So we made a set of stairs that would go up. And then we had we'd also found a little void space that you could probably fit another 100 people in. And that was a chill out room.
Right.
And it turns out that what that bit was the back of the old coronet. It was part of that was a void space between the Rave at the Cave and the coronet, which no one used, but we turned it into a chill out room. So we got another 100 people in there.
Yeah.
You know?
So that was your first, as an acid house rave DJ, that was your first outing, putting on those events, late 88.
Yeah.
How long did it go for, Rave in the Cave?
Well, I was telling people 2 years, but I think it was something like 3 months, 4 months.
Right.
It might not have even been that long, to be quite honest. I'm sure Dave at Fat Media will tell you he's got all the flyers. He's got all
the flyers, because that era always seems so much bigger than what it was.
Yeah.
Like so many, like when you think back to the events, the flyers of 1989, it meant so much and was so fresh, and everyone was so much younger that year is almost like more happened in your head, almost more happened in that year than the next 35 years. But when you go back through things, and it's like
you start checking dates.
You start checking dates and stuff like that. It's like, but that 3 months is so magical to you.
And you know the thing that is a little bit of a regret is that, you know, and I know some people, and even I probably think that it might not have been that good, but, you know, no one carried around cameras in those days. Do you know what I mean? We did do a few videos of the cave, and we actually got one, not that we filmed, but when the police raided it, they have to give, when they take you to court, they have to give you any information they've got. So we got like VHS of all the police raid. And what they done was, came on a train from Waterloo Station, all the police boarded the train, come over the bridge, and then just came out of Elephant train station, which, you know, our club was there and Elephant train station was there. So they just came out the station and bossed through the doors. But you see all of that.
I'd love to see that.
But it had everything. Honestly, it had everything on there. You know, panning on the floor where people had thrown all the drugs on the floor. And I had a copy of it. And a few years later, I was going out to play somewhere. This is when I lived in Bethnal Green. And I was showing someone the video, and I had it in the video recorder. And when we came back in the morning, someone had broken into my house, and all they took was the video recorder. But the tape was still in it.
Oh,
yeah, and I've seen little minute clips of it on different acid house. So it's out there in the public domain
somewhere.
But I'd just love to have that whole thing, because from the start of the raid to the finish, it was just, you don't get footage like that, do you?
Yeah, mate, I'd love to see that. You was
and if anyone's got it, give us a shout.
Yeah, come on.
Got some money for you.
Am I right in saying you was the first person to be arrested by the set up acid squad, who set up the acid squad to shut people like you down? You were the first to be arrested.
It was the first Metropolitan Police's acid house rave, and it was called DICA. I'm not sure whether it's Dica or DICA.
Right.
Acid spelled backwards, but that was the first acid house raid.
And when was that? What was that in the early part of '89?
Yes, it must have been. Yeah, and the worst thing was, when they let us out, we went back to the venue the next day. We've walked in, and I thought, "Where's the deck's gone?" I thought, "Hold on, where's the speakers gone?" And Chalky's gone, "Where's our records gone?" Someone had broke in there after it got raided and just cleaned us out.
Can you remember the raid? Can you remember?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Explain the night. I want to know. I want to know this stuff. Boy.
So what it was a a railway arch, and so if this is the railway arch, okay, then in the corner, up in the air was like a porter cabin. You had a little set of stairs that come up the front, and all you could see from down there was just a window. So we used to play from this window, okay, and what we used to do every now and then was turn off all the lights, and in this room, right, and remember we're looking down on the crowd like that, and there's just a window like that, and we'd put the strobe light in the box, right, and Chalky White, I think it was either him or me, dressed up as a devil. Because remember the record Dance with the Devil?
Yeah.
And you'd have this strobe light flashing. So all the people just thought it was like a screen there, right? And I remember this guy coming up to me, he went, mate, he goes, my missus thought that was a TV screen up there. It was us like, Dance with the Devil, you know, and it's like flashing. But, you know, early analog effects, you know. But we always used to get, the fire brigade would turn up, right? And I'd think, why the fuck is the fire brigade turning up all the time, right? Anyway, one night, this girl was kind of freaking out, and I thought, we'll take her outside, get her some fresh air. And she's sitting there, and she's going, and she just kept going. I thought she's going to explode in a minute, right? So I slapped her around the face, and she got her explode. Honestly, she would just go, and she what
was she doing?
Honestly, she was sitting there just going. Honestly, it was getting higher and higher. I thought she's going to stop in a minute. So I slapped her, and it brought her back to consciousness. But at the same time, I looked, and there was just steam bellowing out the doors and out the vents at the side. And I thought, that's why the fire brigade keep turning up, because they always said, oh, there's been a rumour that there's a fire here. And I thought, no, shut up, you're lying.
Yeah, so they're seeing it come out.
That's what it was. People from the flats across the road must have said there's a building on fire.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was that. But it was a sweatbox, and guaranteed you would come out. It was a working garage, remember?
Yeah, as hot as me now under these lights, nowhere near as hot as that.
This is nothing compared to that. Honestly, people would come out drenched in the morning, and you'd come out black, because, like I said, it was a working garage midweek. We'd just have to pull the cars out and then put them back in the next day.
Yeah, so the raid, the night of the raid.
Yeah. So I remember I was playing.
Did it not bother you, the fire brigade coming out, like, you're all off there, everyone's off their tits, the fire brigade?
No, well, in those days, I mean, and we even, because you know what it was like. I mean, we'd have the police coming past, right? They wouldn't necessarily come in, but they'd come past and they'd go, listen, lads, just do us a favour, make sure that the road out here is clear, so if any fire brigade need to get down. We thought, okay. Because there was a thing in those days, and I'm sure that it was like this, but the police didn't really know
what was happening yet.
Or what was happening, and what laws we were breaking, if any, because, you know, it was a new thing, wasn't it, warehouse parties? So they didn't know if they could actually stop it or not. So I suppose they had to be a little bit amicable with us, you know. But it turned out that they were in there all the time, you know,
keeping an eye on you,
keeping an eye on us, until that day came when they raided us.
You.
Yeah, but I remember I was playing, and all I remember hearing is, you know, a megaphone, right, and clear as day, and it said, right, nobody move, this is a police raid, right, and there was all searchlights and cameramen and stuff like that. Then all of a sudden the lights came on, but they'd left me upstairs for quite a while, and I thought I was just watching it all. You know, they was going round and arresting people and stuff like that, and it probably wasn't for, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes that they actually came up the stairs and come into the box where we were playing from, which kind of gave us a little bit of time to put stuff out of the way. Do you know what I mean? So we was a little bit lucky there, but yeah, it was just crazy, you know. And one of my friends got arrested because every time we'd get a grand in at the door, we would give it to my mate Steve, bigging up Steve P, and he would put it in his car, right? Anyway, they'd seen all this going on, right? So when the police got us, they also grabbed him And they thought he was a drug dealer. So and even on the video, you see them with panning the camera. They're opening his glove box, and there's like grand's worth of money in there, you know. And the police must have thought, yeah, we've got you now, mate, you know. And he got arrested for it. And really, he was just
keeping the money safe.
Keeping the money safe. Yeah.
Yeah. Was you arrested?
Yeah, we got done for allowing the premises to be used for the taking of A-class drugs, ecstasy, cocaine, also allowing the premises to be used for the smoking of cannabis. But we argued in the end, and we said, look, not being funny, but how you know, you've seen that we search people on the door. You know, it's a lot harder to see people taking tablets, or if they've, you know, secreted them, as they say, about their person. And we said, we done everything we can. We admitted to allowing the premises to be used for the smoking of cannabis, and that stuck, and that was all we got done for.
Yeah, listen, the whole like acid house stories of like raids and stuff, for you to be the one who got the first arrest, that is some on top of like your amazing DJ career. That's like, you know, how many like promoters who we know would love that accolade to put on their promoting like belt,
CV,
you know?
Yeah. Well, I never thought of it like that, but on that night that happened, Genesis done one of their first nights in where was it now? And they was that I remember Wayne saying, and I think he's written it in his book before, you know, that they were they'd put on one of their first parties, and they wasn't sure if anyone was going to turn up. And you know what it was like in those days. The rumours of somewhere getting raided went round pretty quick.
Yeah.
Because you know what it was like. You'd go to one party, that would get raided, and everyone else is looking for another place. So there was loads of places going on, wasn't there? So news got around that we'd been raided, and everyone's going, right, where are we going? And Wayne ended up getting all the crowd from us.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So
brilliant.
So he benefited from it.
So Rave in the Cave, you in your head, once it went for 2 years, and then you realise that as you've got older and your memories got better, even if we can't remember record shots between us.
Yeah.
But so it went for 3 months.
Yeah.
What year did you join Sunrise? Sorry. What month did you join Sunrise? In that, was it 89? You joined Sunrise, or 88?
No, it probably would have been 89.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking 89. In my head from listening to you.
Yeah.
Did that come after Rave in the Cave, or after?
Yeah, it came after it.
Right, so I'm just trying to get the trajectory of like going, popping the bill.
Yeah.
Oochie Coochie.
Yeah.
You and your mates set up Rave in the Cave.
Yeah.
You're the first person to get arrested by the Acid Squad for putting on an acid party. Yeah. That is it. The rules were built on you, and you were the ones who they come and collared.
Yeah.
Then you go on Sunrise. Yep. Sunrise comes along.
Yeah.
Then where all of the sudden, it's like when I think of 89, you were everywhere when I went. Like when I worked in a record shop, all the flyers. Sunrise, we used I remember listening to you on Sunrise, and you would in the middle of the set play Carly Simon and all of that, and it's like, so how do you see your trajectory of like when you think that I always say like in an East London warehouse, North London sense, like Ellis Dee was like, because I always say, and me and Brian have touched on this, and me and Mad P have touched on this. South London DJs were over there, whether that was Groove Rider, Fabio, Brian Frost, they were over in South London. Your North London DJs were over here, but in an East London sense, do you know what I'm going to say? East and North London, because like you, Rat Pack, Kenny, certain people. But when do you think, in that short period of 89, all of a sudden you're on Sunrise and all these like flyers everywhere? How did that happen?
I'm really trying to think what maybe the kind of
catalyst.
Well, and what it was that I have a funny feeling that, you know, it was small warehouse parties at first, you know, like the Elephant and Castle. You had Frost and that, who were round at the car wash in South London. You also had Lenny D, that done Unit 4 in Battersea, and that's where Chalky originally came from. Chalky White, the DJ. He used to play with them. But I think that probably one of the start of the bigger parties, was it Hercules Road?
Oh right, yeah. Joe spoke about that in his podcast, Hercules Road.
Yeah, I think that was for me. Again, it's very, very hazy, but I think that was, and that was a big railway arch. That was, and it's funny you should mention the Carly Simon. Why? Because I do remember that there was this older guy and his missus in there, right? And you could see that he wasn't your proper raver. He'd obviously been walking past with his missus. They'd come from somewhere else, and he stumbled across it and thought, "Let's go in there," And he was having it to all the acid music, and then I think at the end of my set I put on Carly Simon Y, and he come up to that. He's going, "What's this fucking shit you're playing?" I was like, "Well, they like it, You seem to be the only one who doesn't like it, And that's only because he wasn't used to hearing that kind of stuff.
Why did explain to those people who might not know that in a rave or an acid house party you would play stuff like Carly Simon Y? Tell me your vibe on that.
It was, you could also mix in quite a lot of Balearic music with that kind of in those days, couldn't you? And I thought that the Carly Simon kind of fitted into that groove a little bit. I also used to play at the end, or not so much at the end, but Donna Summer, I Feel Love. That used to go down a tree, and that is an epic record, and I fitted that in every now and then. Life on Mars, Dexter Wansel, I'd slip that in every now and then, that kind of stuff. But for the Carly Simon, why? I know it doesn't sound like Balearic, but it still had that kind of loving vibe about it, and it kind of went well, really.
It worked for you. It just reminds me of you. Listening to Sunrise and hearing you on there.
Okay.
What was it like in 1989 going from like warehouse to warehouse and that scene?
It was crazy. It was crazy. I remember once. It's probably a little bit later, but. Leaving my house, and I was probably driving faster than I should have been, and this cop has pulled me over, and he's gone, right, where are you going then? So I goes, right, okay, I'm going here, I'm going to Bedford, I'm going to there. He went, when? I said, tonight. He said, no way you're doing that. I said, trust me, mate, I am. I do it every weekend. Yeah, do you know what I mean? And this copper couldn't believe that I was going to get round to all those places, But it was, it was just mental. There was just parties all over the place, weren't there?
Where did you get the name Ellis D?
I got it. And you'll probably know this, but there was an American producer, Junior Vasquez, who used it for one.
Yeah, Took My Love Away.
Yeah. But he was ELLIS and then the letter D, and I thought, and I didn't know he was a DJ. I didn't know he was even Junior Vasquez. Yeah, I don't think it
was a pseudonym, wasn't it? It was a green label, Minimal Records.
And
it was Took My Love Away.
Yeah,
Baby Don't Be That Way. Took My Love, Baby Don't Be. Yeah,
this guy. That's right. And I thought he was just a producer then. So I thought, okay, well, he's an American producer. He's Ellis D. I thought I'll be the British Ellis D, but I'll add a couple of E's on the end. Why not? Yeah. And that was it. That's where I got it from. But people, I do remember a guy coming up to me once and saying, he goes, "Oh, you've changed your hair since you've done that album last, haven't you?" And I didn't have the heart to tell him. To be
it was
honest.
Such a cool name, though. Wasn't it?
It's like, it's you know what it's like when you're kind of picking the name. It's the only other name that I had in mind at the time was Max Bass.
Max Bass.
Yeah. Max
I'm happy you chose. You chose Ellis D.
I know. Max Bass.
Yeah, he just really stood out on the flyers. It was so Ellis D, Groove Rider, Rat Pack. They were just so recognisable of that of that year. There was just
Yeah.
something so like iconic, because it was an iconic year as it was. But there was just certain names that just like really stood out. What are your memories of Sunrise and being in the hub of like pirate radio and the phone lines for finding out about raves and all of that?
Well, I'd never been on radio before, you know, and you know what it's like. It takes a little while to get used to it and talking on the mic and stuff like that. And no, it was great. It was, you know, it was new. You know, there's all these people listening in and requesting songs and just yeah, it was brilliant, you know, and you know, you'd always be surprised how far you got out. You know, as people ringing in from Southend, you think, Jesus Christ, are we getting out that far? You know, but yeah, and the way that Edwin ran Sunrise. I have to give it to him. He was really good. Do you know what I mean? Even to the point of, when it came to like the top of the hour news, he would have a boombox next to the whole setup, and he'd be like, right, we're going over to LBC for the news now.
I remember.
And so what he's doing, he's got the input from another radio station and quickly switched it over to that. And you know, even when it finished, he'd go, right, yeah, thanks to Bob there for the news at LBC, and it all sounded really good. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure the DTI wouldn't have liked that. You know,
being from Hackney, putting on illegal parties. Being on pirate radio, like, did you ever sort of experience all the stories that go on about the either the gangsters or the underhandedness or rivalry?
Yeah.
Did you, but like being the area and the era that you're from, did your parties or anything ever come under anything like that?
Yes. I mean, there was always a rivalry, and it's so good to see that it's squashed a million years ago, you know, and I play on Centre Force now. But Sunrise were
direct competition to Centre Force.
They were, and and I kind of nicked one of their girlfriends from back in the day, right? So I was kind of hated anyway. Do you know what I mean? And one day I didn't go in, and Edwin said to me the next day, "You're lucky you didn't come in." I said, "Well, what's the matter?" He said there was about 20 Centre Force boys outside looking for you. I was like, really?
Really?
Yeah. Because we'd always get threats coming through and stuff like that on the pager. So as we was walking out, I'd have to be a bit careful and stuff. Nothing ever came of it, and it was just a bit of...
Well, we all sit around the dinner table now, didn't we, in Tenerife, laughing about it.
Exactly, you know. And it was brilliant. I really did enjoy my time on radio.
Yeah. When did you first play outside of London? Can you remember your first gig outside of London?
No. Oh, that's it. Sorry, I missed something out there. So yes, we used to do the dungeons, and so one night we're there, and a guy who used to kind of do it, or he was working for us, but you know, one of the helpers, he went, "Roy, quick, Dave the Gambler, another one, R.I.P." He said, "Quick, Roy." He goes, Eddie, who was my mate, who was the kind of security in it. He goes, "There's a couple of big guys upstairs there, and they're going, they don't care who's doing the dungeons, they're doing the security." Right. And I mean, I do know the guy's name, and he is pretty notorious, and I'm not going to mention it. But I came up the stairs, and I'm looking around the corner like that, right? And I can see Eddie talking to these guys, right? So Eddie's come over, he's gone, right, he's gone. They said, "Listen, they're doing the security. If not, they want $2,000, and then they'll leave." I went, give them the $2,000, and that was it. That was gone, and they actually never came back again.
Right.
But yeah, that was, and you could see these guys meant business. Yeah.
Dungeons. That was something that you promoted as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
How long did you do that for?
We had it kind of on and off for quite a long time, even towards the end where it was kind of dwindling out. But I'm tempted to say a couple of years again. I wouldn't for the life of me know.
Yeah.
It was a long time though.
Did you go into dungeons quickly after after Rave in the Cave?
Yeah.
Because would you consider yourself a promoter?
Yeah, well, back then
Yeah,
I started as a
100%.
promoter, but I'd also DJ as well, you
Yeah.
know. So, but yeah, once Elephant and Castle got raided, we thought, right, listen, we need to keep this up. And then we found out about Dungeons that was already being run by Lyndon C. Remember,
Right,
you know
Lyndon
Lyndon?
C.
Yeah.
What a legendary name.
And you know, you had Rob
There's
Atkinson.
there's someone for the history books. Tupac, Lyndon C. and Rob Atkinson.
Yeah,
Come on.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
so many legends out there that need the love, right?
And there was some other guys that used to was it Rip.
Right. Oh, Rip, the event. Yeah.
Because they used to do stuff in there because Mr. C used to play for them in the Dungeons. And so I think they used to do the Friday night, and we convinced the guy who owns it, Lou, to give us the Saturday night. Then there was a bit of a friction there, and it was kind of... So Lyndon and his... Although Lyndon was cool as cucumber, he had a couple of guys around him that were a bit kind of, you know, bit vicious, and there was a bit of aggro between them that were from Leighton and us from Hackney.
And us lot, yeah.
It all turned out
because you're
all right,
a really
yeah.
laid back guy anyway. You're laid back. So in a time that was like quite confrontational, was you fiery?
Nah, not really. No, I've always kind of.
Did you have the fiery mates around you?
There was a few fiery people, you know, but at that time, you know, everyone was popping pills and being nice to each other. But then all of a sudden, you know, I suppose it's like they probably felt like we were stepping on their toes a little bit.
And
you know,
you're all much younger.
Yeah,
and he goes and gets a bit battered and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Dungeons, what a magical place.
Oh.
I loved Dungeons. Dungeons is another one that don't really get talked about enough in the history books. It was I used to love going there.
It was just crazy, you know, and comical as well, because the guy that owned the actual tunnels underneath the pub were dug out by the rockers, because there used to be a rockers pub, so you know, all the motorbikes and the leather and all that. And that used to be their place for parties. Right. Then all of a sudden, someone, it might have been Lyndon's lot, got in touch with him, had known about the venue and had the party in there. But yeah, that was, and it never had a license. And for years, the police would try and stop. The council would be onto him and stuff like that because he didn't have a dance license. So you'd walk in there and you'd have signs up on the walls saying no dancing allowed, right? And so, like, when the police turned up, he'd go, well, look, I've told them no dancing allowed. Why do I need a dance license? I've told them they're not allowed to dance. And so it was backwards, forwards to the court, backwards, forwards. But all in the meantime, we'd still be doing parties there.
Yeah. As a promoter of that time, because you are, like, you're in that mythical 89 year that everyone talks about, like, in such fond memories. And it's almost biblical, isn't it? Like 1989. Promoting, like, did you make money out of it? Was it like...
Yeah. I mean, at first, you know, Elephant and Castle, £5 to get in.
Yeah.
A £5.
Imagine that now, eh?
Yeah. £5. What can you do with a £5 nowadays? But yeah, £5 to get in. You know, there was 4 partners, and we was all earning money.
Yeah.
You know, we were. Dungeons, we started off giving him, I don't know, $1,000 or whatever it was, to hire the place. So we was earning plenty of money out of it then. Then he got a little bit smart to it, and he said, listen, I'm not renting it out anymore, but I'm going to put my parties on. I want you, Roy, to arrange all the DJs for me. And he'd give me, I don't know, say 1,500 quid for playing and arranging and my mate Eddie would do the security, so he'd get paid for that. So we were still earning good out of it, but then over the years, the money was going down and down and down till and he was really taking the piss out of us. And it come to it one Saturday or one Friday, and I said to my mate Eddie, I said, I ain't doing it anymore. He really shafted us over. I thought, do you know what? I'm going to mess you up here. Yeah. So I sneaked into the Dungeons, right? Put my hand up into the speakers and I pulled one wire off of every speaker. Right. I thought, because he did kind he tried,
pissed you off.
Yeah, he tried to wedge me out. And I thought, I'm not having that. Anyway, about an hour before the club opened, they've realised there's no sound coming out of anywhere, and I knew no one would suss it out. Do you know what I mean? One wire off this speaker. So Eddie's phoned me up. He's gone, oh, Lou said he'll give you your normal money. Get down here. The sound system's not working. So I went back down, reconnected the wires,
and
boom, boom, boom. We're back on again. Yeah.
19 actually, before we get on to 1990,
yeah.
was you still working in 89, or was you like living for the weekend, putting on your promotions, DJing, doing the radio?
Yeah, well, I'm sure, I think I gave up work while we was doing because I was doing the courier stroke chauffeur work then. I gave up while we was doing Elephant and Castle, if I remember rightly,
right?
Or it was just short after. So because it must have been a bit after, because other people had started booking me to play at their parties, and I thought, do you know what? I'm earning enough money from the parties at the moment. I don't even need to go back to work. So I think it was just after the close.
Yeah. Did you see it as a career? Did you think, oh, I could make something out of this, or was it just like, I'm doing it weekend to weekend? I'm getting a bit of dough.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I thought if I want to, I can always go back to even the same company that I used to, because it was like that in driving companies in those days.
Yeah.
They always wanted people. So even if it didn't work out, I could have went back there, you know?
Yeah. After the 89 year of the illegal parties, and sort of like the police really did clamp down, didn't they? Gangsters really did push people out to the point where, we're a bit scared of carrying on here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was like that, wasn't it, for a little while?
Because a lot of people think that it's just the police that
you got to
brought it
watch
to
out
an end,
for.
but it's not until you get like Paul Abifa and Joe Labyrinth here, and they're like, they say, well, it's both sides of the coin here that sort of like stopped a lot of people from carrying on.
Yeah. Well, I'm not, just so I don't forget about it, I remember one of the first cases of stuff going on like that. You remember Brian that used to work with Labyrinth?
With Joe, Big Brian, Big Brian,
I think he's RIP now as well.
Yeah, Big Brian,
I seem to remember something where there was some guy went down there with an axe or something. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember all those stories.
And you know what? It's like the news in those days, even there was no internet or anything.
Yeah,
you know,
but it spread around.
It spread, like, you'd know the next day. And people would be, oh, did you hear what happened at Labyrinth last night and stuff like that? Yeah. And that was, for me, was the start of it, when I thought, oh, hold on, there's some people trying to muscle in here.
Because it weren't just it was all kinds of things going on that was stopping the free-loving, lawless warehouse parties. Turn of going from 89 into 1990, there was definitely a change, wasn't there? Like going back into, like, more clubs were coming along. The music was changing. The music was changing. The whole bleeps and bass and breakbeats coming in. When you started producing, like, what gave you the vibe for starting to produce that, like, early rhythm section stuff, end of 1990, early 91?
Well, what happened? I'd never even thought about making music, and one of my friends had bought a flat off of these guys, and he said, "Oh, you should go down and see them." He goes, "They're doing some music." So I was like, "Oh, okay." So went down and saw them. It was Rennie P, Richie T, and they were doing some music. And it was kind of genreless. I called it Bon Tempi music, right? You know, like the bossa nova. No, it wasn't that bad. And I said to my girls, look, what you need is a sampler. And they said, oh, we know someone who's got a sampler. And it turned out to be Nick Newton. And we got him in. So now there was 4 of us, and we formed Rhythm Section. None of them were clubbers. They didn't, or not acid house clubbers or rave clubbers. So I'd kind of tell them, look, this is what we need. And the formula was kind of, a breakbeat, kind of reggae bass line, maybe a piano and stuff like that. And I kind of told them the formula. They put it together. And during that time, I learned how to do music and stuff like that. And it was those guys that taught me, you know, Rennie, Nick, and Richie. It was them that taught me, and that was our Rhythm Section.
Was the vibe of your sets throughout 90 and early 91 a big inspiration to that first? The first EP was The coming on strong. No.
The first single.
The first single was had the same vocal sample as. No, go on, tell me. I'm not.
No. I want to see.
I'm thinking. Check out the bass.
That was it. That was it.
Yeah. Check out the bass.
That's it. That was the first. That was the first 12 we done. The second one was Circuit Breaker. Yeah, that was an EP. What we done, I think we had 4 different mixes on it.
Yeah.
And then we started doing like the series of EPs. But then what we would do, because there was 4 of us and we all had a kind of a little bit of a different flavour for music. So, we go, right, this first track, Rennie, you're going to take the lead on it and you tell us how you want it to go. Then the next one might be Richie, and he was a bit more techno-orientated, so he would take the lead on that. And that's how we kind of got 4 different kind of sounding tracks, but all the kind of stuff that rave people would listen to, and it worked well. It worked well.
It's a brilliant catalogue.
It's not bad.
It is a really, really good catalogue of tunes. Throughout 90 and 91, you started going all over the UK, hadn't you?
Yeah.
DJing.
Yeah.
Before it got to like that 92 hardcore period and started speeding up, what are your memories of playing around the country in 90 and 91?
Oh, you're sticking it
Am
on
I testing
now.
you here?
You are, yeah. They were very, very hazy days, those days. 91. Probably, and I could be wrong, but I think, just getting out to places like Wolverhampton, stuff like that, Willenhall, I can't remember the club that was up there, Birmingham quite a bit. And you obviously had Milwaukee's, which was a crazy place. But yeah, it was the start of traveling up the motorways and stuff like that. And then you had the one that was like up near Hull somewhere, and you think, oh, blimey.
Considering you thought that
Harlow
was out in the country, what was it like then when you was going up to Hull?
Oh, mate.
Hull, like 3.5 hours away. How did that feel to be?
All in one night, and then probably playing somewhere else, It was like, and no wonder the copper told me, no, there's no way you could do that, but obviously it was breaking the speed limit ridiculously in those days, because you know what it's like. You try and leave an hour's travelling time between each gig in those days, and no matter how far it was away, you had to get there within an hour, you didn't want to miss a slot, but yeah, most people would have never thought it was, even myself would have never thought it was possible to join up the dots in one night and get round to all those
from
places.
Discovering Oochie Coochie and an E in like early 88, and then all of a sudden to be 3 years later making music, going up and down the country. It's like it was never part of the plan, right?
It was. I do always remember, even before the acid house scene come around, and I remember reading like I think it was a DMC leaflet or magazine or something like that, and it had the job of a remixer DJ there, and I remember reading it, and it was explaining what they did, because everyone knows what they do nowadays, but they didn't really back then. And I remember reading, someone might have been like Tony Prince or something like that, and he was laying it all out, and he said, so our job is, a record company have signed a band. They've realised that the single's not as good as they really thought it was going to be, so they give it to me. I do a mix of it like that and make it a bit more dancey, and that's how I make my money. And I always remember thinking, what a great job! Yeah, what a brilliant job to have. In your own little. People didn't have many of their home studios, but just being in a studio and making music, I just thought, never aimed
for it.
Yeah, for it, to be quite honest. But then as time goes on, like I said, you start making music and stuff like that, and you think, actually, I'm here. I'm doing that now, And so I was as surprised as anyone, really.
Yeah, because 91 was a brilliant year for for like early British breakbeat
Yeah.
hardcore.
Oh yeah.
And you guys really do have some like standout tracks. Like from
Thank
your
you.
first one, Check Out the
you.
Bass,
Yeah.
Circuit Breaker. I loved Atomic.
That
Atomic.
was. Do you know what?
I love that.
I remember,
tune.
and the bass line on
The
that.
bass line when you was off your face on that tune. It
and
was
that was because it was. I think the first time we'd used the landlord noise, the landlord sound, and Rennie Pilgrim done that bass. And I remember we used to record in Nick's. He had a studio in Brixton, and we used to go there. And I remember walking in, and I'd heard that boom, 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 and I thought, I said, who played that bass? And Rennie went, I did. I was like, shut up. He went, oh look. I was like, that is good.
Yeah.
And that I always remember doing a big gig in Northampton, ESP or was it or something like that? Oh, no, Weekend World. We done a PA there with it, and when that bass dropped, it was just like, and there was quite a lot of people there. I don't know how many thousand, and it was like the whole party just erupted, and I thought, wow, that is powerful.
Because you was also early in adding reggae and getting vocalists in, doing like Wind Up Your Waist, slow motion.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and, you know,
well,
you was putting reggae in. You was putting that flavour in to your slower. Because 91, the music was much slower.
Oh yeah. But that was the kind of briefs that I gave them. And the Rennie and Nick and Richie, you know, they said, well, what are we aiming for? And I said, the first track, the Check Out the Bass was I said, right, we want an amen loop, we want some kind of reggae bass line, maybe a little bit of a raggedy vocal, you know, and that was, like you say, 90 or even 90 or 91. But that was the kind of brief that I give them, and we rode on that for quite a while because that was the sound, you know. So it is a kind of, I suppose, you couldn't term it jungle, but you know the elements,
the influences that create it further down the line is all there, you know, because
exactly.
Them tracks were the same time as like.
That's what I was trying to remember. What other tracks were that I would have been influenced to
do that.
What year was Four for Money?
Four for Money was 1990. Helter Skelter and Radio Babylon were 1990. So they were kind of like the first sort of lot in the breakbeaty kind of moment that you hear with that sort of W. Well, not specifically the first, but in 1990, and then you guys come along and a few others like WIE and that, and ramped up the tempo a little bit.
Yeah.
Amon started coming in. The sub got heavier.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It was another part of the evolution, but you managed to keep the hands in the air, the bass, the stabs.
So I'd always kind of, and I remember saying it in early interviews, I always like to put a bit of music in our music, you know. I just didn't want it to be just a full out, and I'm not saying they don't work, you know, full out or kind of assault, dance floor assault track, you know. But I do like a bit of dynamic, or even back then, a bit of dynamics in the track. Always liked a female vocal, and would always put one in wherever we could, you know. But yeah, always a supporter of having some kind of nice music in there.
I guess that kind of fits back into you playing acid and house and putting a Carly Simon Y in. It's always there in your style to mix things up. 1992.
Well, you could mix things up in those days, couldn't you? You didn't, and I must admit, throughout the years, there was a period where you kind of had to play within certain parameters.
Yeah, you become a genre, don't you?
Or sort of, you know, and if you played anything a bit left field, you could see people were moving off the dance floor or stuff like that. And I didn't really like that. I liked it when you could mix it up a little bit and slip something in there that people wouldn't normally expect, and they go, actually, do you know what? I like that.
Yeah, and it defines you, and it gives you your own unique style. 1992, like anyone who's listening during 89 on Sunrise, going to your events at Dungeons or Rave in the Cave in that era, like everyone knows, like Ellis D, pop in, like anyone who knows like your name on the rhythm section records and your DJing.
Well, a lot of people didn't know
they
that.
didn't know.
A lot of people, like even years after, went, I didn't know you was in rhythm section.
Yeah,
my name was on the back of the album.
Your name was on them. So if you're a geek like me looking, you know, and it's like, yeah, that's Ellis D.
People used to do that, didn't they, back in the day? You know, even before the whole acid house scene and stuff come like that, you know, my old soul funk, and I'd be looking at the names on the back of the records.
That's the buzz of being a record collector.
Be looking at then who produced that? Oh, Quincy Jones. Well, I never knew. Or and maybe not a lot of people know this, but you know, Carly Simon Y.
Who was Nile Rodgers.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people realise that really.
Yeah, I feel 1992 was another huge pivotal moment for you. Yeah. Like there's something about, I guess my point is, like anyone who followed you from either your raves, your first raves, or were hooked to you on the radio in your first sort of year, your first moment.
Yeah,
that name's always been big and like, that's Ellis D. But in 1992, like hardcore got faster, the scene really, really changed. But
it became, I won't say commercialised, but it came
far wider spread from people. It became like so many more people descended on raves and brought records and wanted to be DJs. And, you know, like it was just a different moment to the 89, 90, even 91.
Well, there would have been people coming into it that time that had probably never even heard of me.
Yeah, and coming into
or any of the other DJs around for that matter, but they've just had their first entrance into it, and then now they've taken a pill, and then they're exposed to all the DJs that were around at the time.
And so by that time, you're really experienced. Like by that time, you're some years down the line.
Yeah,
I feel like 1992 is a whole new era and another like.
Oh,
bam!
It's
Ellis
like
D.
It's been fired out of a cannon. Yeah.
Yes, some of the records you made, Rock to the Max, and all of that stuff. It's underground Roughneck Business with Swanee, the huge like flyers in general for events that become bigger and more spectacular, didn't they? Right. And like you was right in the hub of that. Like you was in the hub musically, like making music. And two, as a DJ, you was like, I think of Ellis D, Sasha.
It was probably for me the biggest year. I would think 92 was definitely. It was, and a lot of it just you know yourself. A lot of those years just blend into each other, kind of thing, and you know, and especially if you're doing I won't say doing stuff you're not supposed to do, but if you're taking mind-bending drugs back then, you know, everything just morphs, and it's hard to disseminate it all from one. You know, people come up to me and they go, "Oh, do you remember?" And I'm like, No, I don't remember. And they go, "No, you should." I don't remember.
You remember Fantazia though?
Yes,
you?
I do. Remember
there's that, because the picture of you at Fantazia is iconic, isn't it?
Well, you probably know this story, but I didn't get that picture till about 7 years after it was taken. It was actually Food Junkie that took that picture.
Really?
With one of those old throwaway Kodak cameras.
Right.
And Tracy, Kenny Ken's old missus, was my agent then. And I went round to a house to, whatever it was, pick up some money or something. And she went, "Oh, I found a really good picture of you." I was like, "Oh, yeah, let's have a look then." She pulled it. I was like, "Wow." I said, "Can I have it?" She goes, "Of course you can."
What a picture.
But yeah, off of a shitty little Kodak camera. You know, you remember the little yellow ones that you threw away? And about 7 years after it was taken, I got that.
Yeah, it's iconic. You on them decks of that huge Fantazia, which is pretty much like of that year. Would you say that was the biggest sort of like rave of the year?
Oh yeah, definitely. It was arguably the best rave of the year then.
Yeah, a pinnacle for the hardcore scene. What are your memories of playing at that? Can you remember tunes you played?
Yeah.
Look at it this way. People like Jay Cunning ain't going to let you forget the tunes that you played and the order.
Yeah. He is the oracle. He is. But there was a period in time where, you know, back in those days, it was a mixture of you was doing clubs, and then you might have gone from a club to a rave, or from a big rave to a club, you know. But I'd always remember, and there was a period in time where, you know, because in those days, people used to stay to the end, didn't they?
Yeah, they
You
really
know?
did.
Yeah. And then, you know, you'd have 10,000 there at 12 o'clock at night. You'd have 10,000 at 8 o'clock in the morning. And there was a period where I liked finishing off big raves. And that was the last set at summertime there. And it was just brilliant. It was like we was probably 30 foot in the air. It was the height of summertime. Sun was beaming down, 7 o'clock in the morning, and it probably couldn't have been much better, and unless we was situated in Ibiza or something like that, you know, or Corfu, you know. But yeah, and because I'd never experienced nothing like that before. You know, this is just.
You remember the give me. I'm going to say 5 tunes just off the top of your head.
I Cannot Bear to See You Leave Me.
Awesome free.
Midsummer Madness. Oh,
I've stumped you. Give me
no. Chris Paul.
Isotonic.
Yeah. Different strokes for different folks.
Should we keep it at 3? Shall we keep it 3? What are your styles so unique, right? Like the way you'd step up and you'd come in and you'd just be mixing it up, like cross-fading over.
I was always one of those busy DJs.
You was busy. you was absolutely like busy with it. And like what was your feeling and your vibe to step into a rave and come on after whoever and just be like, here I am.
Oh,
slam it around.
It's brilliant. And who I must thank for that style, you know, in the early days when I was going out and we was doing Elephant and Castle, and we used to go, you know, Thursday nights at Rage, everyone used to go there. And I used to stand by the box and watch Colin Hudd, right? Now, and that's where I got that style from, the you know, the crossfader style, because a lot of DJs then were just up, down. But Colin Hudd, you know, I used to stand and I was mesmerised by him, you know, and I would stand there and I'd watch him and I'd just think, mate, you are the man.
Yeah, you loved it.
And that's where I got that kind of style.
Yeah, because in like in the pirate radio era of 88, 89, you'd hear a lot of it, and then it kind of gradually faded out, that style.
Okay.
And then I feel like you kept that, and Frost, Nigel, like you guys kept that alive into the hardcore and into the 93 and that.
Yeah.
And it was like you just had this. We knew you were there.
Thank you.
It was like just the style of like.
Hey, there would be some mistakes back then.
Oh, come on, of course. Why would there be? Because tell me this, you also liked being a little bit on it when you was playing.
I was just crazy. People used to say to me, "How the fuck do you DJ like that?" And I don't know. But if you look behind me, I was standing on my records sometimes. People go, "Are you standing on your records?" I go, "Oh, right, put it back in." But then as soon as I was front and centre, you know, it was just like. But there was a period, and I was talking about this to the missus the other night, and I was just going to say 6 months, but it probably wasn't that long. It was probably about 3 months, something like that, or maybe not even that long, where every mix I was trying to do just didn't work.
Right.
And I was going out to places and I was pulling the crossfader over, and you know, I could do pretty long mixes back in those days, and I'd go like that, and I think I can hear it going out, and I'd pull it back over, and I thought, is this ever? And I was listening to old tapes of mine to see if I could ever mix, because it just.
And what did you think when you listened back to
them? Well, I can mix.
Yeah,
you know? And I thought, but I couldn't understand why I was not even able to mix 2 records together for even like 30, 40 seconds. And then one night it just came back, bang, and it was back.
Yeah.
I don't know what the explanation was, but I was glad it came back.
Yeah, 1993, you had a brilliant knack, and going into 1994, of when the music sped up, you was really good at doing what you always did and keep the melodic side
Right.
and the piano-y and the happy, but also understanding the deeper bass line as it went more darker and futuristic. You was really good at that.
Thank you.
You was really, really good at that.
Do you know, it was... there was a period, and you must have had this. It's like, you know, when you've been DJs for as long as us, where and it's you know, you think, I'm not really liking a lot of the music that's coming out now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we've all been there.
You will go through that if you've had careers as long as us.
Yeah,
you can't like all of the styles of music that come out all the time. You know, and they're you know. Especially when kind of drum and bass, because it was, I think it was termed drum and bass before it was jungle, really. And I just thought there was a period there where I thought people were trying to be too clever with the beats. They were chopping them up and stuff like that. And I think the mentality that people had to dance to these tunes was a little bit lost in people trying to show off.
right.
You know, you probably had people there going, "Oh yeah, I like the way the compression he's put on that snare." Most people,
You wanted dance floor tunes.
I just want dance floor tunes. Do you know what I mean? And so I held off really playing. You know, that kind of sound that I was used to in '92. That I feel that was suited to me was changing. The kind of drum and bass stuff, the early stuff was too dark for me, really. And with people just chopping the beats up, you know, boom, 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 bang, 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 dum, 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 like that, was just, I just thought, this is not dance music, you know. I'm sure some people could dance to it, but it wasn't what.
Yeah, it weren't your voice. It moved so quickly, didn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that was it. It was moving so quickly for you.
Yeah.
And like in '92, you've got all the Rock to the Maxes and all those tunes. And like, if you thought about it logically, within 6 to 8 months of you closing Fantazia with all those big tunes, at the turn of '93, things got really, really fast, and like, the music really, and we were getting thrown so much music in the record shops,
promos like that every day, wasn't
dark,
it?
Happy, 4/4. You even made some house rhythm section, didn't you? At one point,
yes, that's right. Yeah, because we didn't really like the sound that it morphed into, and then we thought, you know what, we'll try a house stuff.
Yeah, I remember.
It didn't really work for us, but you know, you never know until you try.
Yeah.
But yeah, it did change drastically, you know. It kind of killed it for a lot of people because, you know, especially I suppose those people that came into it in '92 and they thought, yes, I love all this kind of piano-y breakbeat stuff and all that. And then a year later, it's changing for those people.
Yeah, it was changing so quick. But things like Free the Feeling, which you did.
Oh, yeah.
I love that, you and Chrome and Time. That has remained a big tune for me. Naughty, a year later.
I know
Naughty but nice.
Naughty but nice.
That's always fascinated you, Al. Like I've always. Roy's got Roy's got a track that I called "Give It to Me, Baby," which Vinyl Fanatics have reissued for you over the years.
Big up, Brent.
I love what Brent does.
Yeah.
But I think I'm one of the only people or the only person who's ever put it on an album over the years. Yeah. And at one point, you even called yourself something different on it because you was like, the producers you called yourself. You was like, Danny, you really still playing this? Like,
well, the reason behind that was because the music was changing, right? Yeah. And I thought, do you know what? There was the elements were still kind of being used in from what I was used to playing in '92, and I thought that kind of the tune you're talking about is a little bit of a different genre. It's a little bit faster. It's got a 4/4 in there, but it still had all the elements of what I liked from the old stuff, you know. Yeah. And I thought, I don't know if it's something that I should put under my name or whether I shouldn't. And that was the whole thing about doing it under the producers. Yeah. The last thing you want to do is do something that's different to what you're known
people
for.
Go, oh, what's happening with him?
And it flops, yeah.
Yeah, mate, like...
And I think you're probably responsible for quite a lot of people knowing that it was me, because
a
lot of people didn't know.
The repress and reissue, he's getting repressed and reissued again from the repress and reissue. And yeah, I'm like because here is the thing about that tune and that particular era, right? Mm-hmm. Is one of the banes of my DJ career from that period. Yeah. Is that 1994 breakbeat piano hardcore that had some, like that track's got some of the more Ron Wellsy intelligent jungle techno sounds. The breakbeats are really crisp. Mm-hmm. The strings that you've used, it's really musical, it's really emotional, and it's
I like to put music in the music,
and it's really classy.
Thank you.
Right? And you had music like that. Ramos and Supreme had music like that. Yeah. There was various, and it was only a small amount of tracks, right? And people might not catch what I'm saying here, but for me, you, Ramos and Supreme, made music that was as timeless and as cool as what Bookham and a few others were doing in another sense, right?
Thank you.
And people, I stand by that. Mm-hmm. Even though those records are from a smaller pool of the genre, here we are 31 years later saying that Brent is repressing the repress of the repress from a track that you couldn't even understand. Why is Dan putting this on a Ministry album? And and the reason why it's a bane of my life is because that period only really lasted for 6 months.
I knew you
because you, Ramos, Supreme, Slipmatt nailed it with the more anthemic stuff that, a more widespread anthemic thing. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you had Slam and Vinyl. You had various people who were doing great stuff, and it was all brilliant to me. Mm-hmm. But you and Ramos and Supreme Sunset Regime had an air of class. There was just something about it.
Thank you.
And for whatever reason, and it's the bane of my life because I felt that it should have lasted for a number of years as a part of the genre of hardcore. And it never, because everything moved on so quickly, you know, hardcore become much faster and stompier. Yeah. The breakbeat stuff become more jungle stroke drum and bass. Yeah. And I just, for me,
was it only 6? I see, I'm terrible with dates, but was it about 6 months?
The breakbeat piano, can you call it happy hardcore? I'm not sure. We could, the last sort of remains of the breakbeat piano hardcore before, hardcore moved into a different thing and jungle drum and bass become its thing. I really do only think it was a short-lived period through 1994, and in my 35 years of playing, it's one of the only banes where I think
that should have lasted a bit longer.
There should have been more of that, and because if you think of Give It To Me Baby, you really can put it on now and go, that's class, and people are still, actually people are buying it for the first time because they didn't know it existed previously. So,
well, it did kind of encompass quite a lot, didn't it? Like I said, it had the 4/4 beat in it, it had the piano, it had the vocal, there's a bit of music in there, and it was, there was parts of it that was still, the part that I always say where it's right, we've come out of all the piano and everything. It's time to dance now. The tough bit. So there was elements of maybe quite a lot of stuff that had gone before within that one little genre there.
Yeah, I remember a period. So I really want to get on and talk about the importance of heritage now, but because we're both very fortunate, aren't we, that people really celebrate the heritage, and we go out and we're like the backbone or the sound of people's weekends of capturing their heritage. Before we get onto that, I remember a period where you'll be able to say this to me after Give It To Me Baby stuff with Chrome and Time. I felt like there was I'm going to say a year, maybe 2, where you might not have been making tunes. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you seem to just, at United Dance, Helter Skelter, World Dance, I'm saying 96-ish time, where you come out and had this moment where you had you was really capturing the jungle and drum and bass scene of the time. You were making tunes and it was
he's back.
Yeah, everyone was on how could anyone in jungle drum and bass or any of the music's not respect that Ellis D's here? And you had some wicked tunes.
Yeah, well,
in that period.
Well, the kind of you know, you had world dance that predominantly before that had been, you know, a breakbeat piano-y kind of rave and stuff like that. Then the change was coming in, and I didn't really embrace that kind of darker sound. Although world dance were playing it, and you had people like Mickey, like Kenny, Darren J, and all them, and they'd kind of cottoned on to that sound early, and they were in it. It wasn't for me at first. Then all of a sudden, there was a change in it where it wasn't so dark. Reggae samples were coming back in. There was a bit of music in there, and it was a whole jump up thing. And then for me, I like that kind of sound.
Yeah,
you know. And so I was, I wasn't really kind of after the kind of period of naughty but nice, and things were getting a bit faster and maybe a little bit more like the chipmunk vocals. I wasn't really into that. So there wasn't much I was interested in playing then. And the jungle or the drum and bass up to that point had been pretty dark. So I was in a bit of a place where I thought, I'm not really liking that, and I'm not liking that.
yeah.
People were still booking me and stuff like that. So there was a little period where I was going out and I was pulling out stuff and thinking, this is just as bad as the other one, and wasn't really paying much attention. And I thought I was going to give up DJing at that point. I thought then it switched to what we know as the real jump up drum and bass, not like this squeaky stuff they do nowadays. And I liked that sound. It had plenty of energy, had pianos in it, had vocals in it. I'd always been into reggae music a million years beforehand, so I liked a bit of reggae in there as well. And then I kind of come back to the front again because I was playing, you know, the jump up stuff, and you know, world dance were championing that.
Yeah, I remember. I
time.
just remember seeing you like loads doing that, and it was so different to how I'd remembered you like 2 years previous.
Okay.
Like you'd obviously found like your passion, because from like talking to you now, it's like and actually what I really like is like if you're not feeling something, it kind of shows. Like it do you know what I mean? Like your passion for your vibes and what works for you.
Yeah.
Like how easy it is for you to lose interest until you find that that thing that turns you on again.
Well, you know, we could back then I could have just stayed on and you know, played what I thought was the best that people wanted to hear and stuff and take the money, but I
didn't sit right.
I would have just got bored of that, and I wouldn't have done it. You know, I mean, you know, when we started DJing, it was not about money, was it?
Yeah, never.
It was never about money. It was, you know, it was for the love of doing it. You know, there was hardly any money back in the day, and so it wasn't for the money. And if I didn't like what I was doing, then I certainly wouldn't have done it. You know, so I thought, you know, I've had a fair run at it now. We're probably up to what year, 93, 94, maybe, something like that.
Yeah.
So I'd already been in it 5 years, you know, and I thought, okay, maybe it's time for me to bow out here. There's not much really going on that I like. And then all of a sudden it just shifted and changed, and I thought, actually, I'm back in.
But I think because your legacy's been so strong throughout all, like the golden years, it like completely makes sense in my head that you wouldn't need to do something that you weren't feeling, and you know, the fact that you waited to make your next lot of tunes when it was something that you was feeling or naturally felt only makes your repertoire of tunes and your legacy even stronger of your productions and what it is that you've done.
Well, I feel that I was lucky to be able to get away with that, you know. Maybe you know what it's like. We've seen DJs come, we've seen them go, we've seen them come back again and go again.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I don't think there's obviously been quiet periods over the years. But like I said, there's never been a period where I've come back, gone, you know, and then just disappeared forever after, you know. So I think that early cementing from the early days really done me good. Do you know what I mean? And built up a kind of solid fan base.
It's an incredible legacy
from the early days. and and that's what allowed me to then, then come back after maybe a little bit of a lull period. And if you come back with something good, the music will
take you.
Will do it, won't it?
The whole legacy thing that me and you find ourselves in, like we DJ out a lot together on the same bills. Yeah. I come a year and a half after you, but we kind of tap into the same area and some of the same events and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And we're kind of like the soundtrack to people's weekends and their youths and their.
You don't realise, do you?
Yeah.
You don't realise how important it is to people, and you probably get it on your Facebook posts and stuff like that. But people say, "Thank you, thank you for the music,"
Yeah.
Not in like the ABBA style, but
Yeah, I take it,
and it's not until you think about it, and you think
it's an honour.
Actually, it is an honour. It's an honour, mate. Thank you.
I take where we're at with a real responsibility, because I could never have dreamed. It was never in the plan to listen to Ellis D in 1989 on Sunrise, and 36 years later, we will be talking about that moment in time. Yeah. It was never in my plan to ever believe that from beyond the next weekend in 1990, that we would be celebrating this music and people's because that's what we do. We provide people with their memories through playing the classics and being out at the weekend, and like these people are the same age as us, you know, everyone's like 50 to 65 still coming out, and I love this legacy heritage scene, and I love being part of it, and I love like that we're people like me and you and Rat Pack, and we're still here. Like
it's it is crazy, and you know me, I've never had an ego about the DJing thing, and in the early days, people coming up to you all the time wanting autographs and all that, and it never really came comfortable to me. Do you know what I mean? I remember going to like the first Dreamscape or second or whatever Dreamscape, and you'd pull up outside or whatever, and there'd be a crowd of people, and you'd hear them go, "Oh no, it's Ellis D, it's Billy Bunter," and stuff like that. And some people I'm sure would revel in that. Do you know what I mean? But I was never really comfortable with it and stuff.
The first time, because in sort of like the late 80s, early 90s, around the East End and North, no one was asking us for our autographs, was they? We were going in, playing, and then like when we started going further afield and started making records, and people would cut, and it never. It always felt so awkward for me because I never visioned that someone would ask us for our autograph and being like rave DJs who like popping pills ourselves and like have been living for the weekend. And
you really want you really want my signature?
Yeah. I remember the first time someone ever asked me for an autograph was at an event out of London that me and DJ Vibes are at.
Okay.
And I was like going to Shane, wow. And he was like, "No, this happens to me every weekend." Because I hadn't been going out of London at all when I started going out, and it was like it was the most bizarre thing. Whereas now, it's like I don't know about you, but maybe I took a lot of stuff for granted when we were younger and in the early days.
Oh, we probably all did. Mate. Yeah, probably all did.
Yeah, and now it's like I really think it's. Someone said underneath one of my posts the other day, like. Because I post a lot, like I like capturing the gigs, I like capturing us all, I like getting.
No, it's great. It's great what you do.
Because we had, like you say, you wish you'd have more stuff back in the day of what you did, capturing it. So now I do it, and like someone actually said to me, like underneath one of my posts, I'm paraphrasing, but it was saying like along the lines of like. This scene that this lot are doing is like 35, 36, 37 years old. What other scene has still got that going on of people wanting to go out?
Yeah. Well, that's right. The generation before us had the 60s and stuff like that. And yes, there's still pockets of that going on. That you've got the Northern Soul and stuff like that. But it was probably a big explosion back in its day, but it hasn't had the longevity that the rave scene has.
Yeah, it's a huge longevity. Why do you think you keep on doing it, and like the promoters phone you and you're there and like, you know, you're even this podcast, like Roy's like, let's get a video down and tell them why do you think like you've still got the buzz for it?
It's just, do you know what? And because yes, it's very easy to get complacent about it. You know, I remember I was out with just friends, and I was like, oh fucking hell! And I go, what's the matter? I said, oh, I've got to fly to Canada tomorrow, and they're like, what for? I said, oh, I'm playing. And they're like, what are you moaning about it for? And I thought, oh, it's aggro getting to the airport and all that. And then I thought, and then I look on Facebook sometimes and I see the poor guys that have been smashing away at DJing for a million years in the kitchen. While the missus has gone out on a Saturday night, he's got his decks in the kitchen with a little laser going, and he's got 5 people
watching him, and he's loving it,
and he's loving it. Do you know what I mean? And I think to myself, that guy would love to do just one night of what I've done or what you've done, and I shouldn't take this stuff for granted, because people would love to have that opportunity. You know, and I still love doing it.
Yeah, we have been gifted an amazing time, like an amazing time, and I think like another thing, because of the areas and the time period that we come up in, there wasn't like a career mentality toward it.
No,
there wasn't like, if you think of some of the first lot of flyers we was all on, they were scribbled on, or they were like typeset flyers.
Well, the one for Elephant and Castle, I made, you remember Letraset?
Yeah.
And I knew some girl that worked in this paper printer's place, and she managed to get us some fluorescent paper. We got the Letraset and drew it, and there's there's like a hand that I drew with, and it's got the symbol for acid. It's got a little test tube, and I draw that. It's right dodgy, but it was all just, and she got them printed at her workplace for us for nothing. But that was all done with Letraset, and was just basically a piece of paper, really. Do you know what I mean?
love all that. I love all that sort of like homegrown, just let it happen organically.
Spelling mistakes on there and everything.
Come on, like some of the things I've seen you, Ellis. Like I've seen flyers with you where your name's been just Ellis D.
Right. Oh yeah.
As well as the Ellis D.
Well, because people used to say to me in the early days, they said, "Oh, are you Ellis D or are you Ellis D?" I said, "Oh, I'm both." And what do you mean? I said, "Well, if you say it down the phone, if a promoter hasn't seen a flyer or whatever, then he'll think it's just Ellis D, won't they?" You know.
So I've had over the years, people just make it up as they go along. Daniel Bunter. Billy Bunter Daniel.
Really?
Oh mate, I've had loads. Like Bunter, just Bunter.
Yeah.
And like I think my only like thing that sort of makes me feel good about it is Frost has been the same. Jack Frost, Jack Frost. You know, like when you got a 3-barreled name, people like sometimes promoters just make their own,
make it up,
make their own interpretation for it, kind of thing. And
well, Swanee used to get that all the time. Like we used to call him DJ Swain, because people they wouldn't put like a hyphen in between the Swan and the E. So it was DJ Swain or whatever.
Swain.
Yeah, or a Swanee with 2 N's and then 2 E's, and his name was always getting.
If you could pick a favourite year of your legacy, of your history, what would it be?
I'm tempted to go for 92 straight away, but you know, the early years when it was all brand new and just you know. Because by the time 92 come round, I won't say a lot of the shine. Certainly not the shine. But you know, I've gone from playing at people's little house parties, 40, 50 people. Now all of a sudden I'm playing in warehouses and stuff like that, and that was a big jump, you know. And all right, then it went to warehouses to kind of big super raves. But I think that initial period from going from house party to warehouses was special, I think. But kind of commercially or whatever, I'd say 92 was my best year. It's between like the early 88s and the
Can you see yourself stopping?
Oh.
Because you ain't stopped yet.
No, I know that. answer that question.
You can't answer.
I can't answer that.
Judging by how you was at Jay Cunning's 50th in front of me, I don't actually think that you can stop. I don't. Watching you and Jay, you were like Kevin and Perry, because you like the mad thing was you was both in front of me raving for Jay Cunning's 50th.
Yeah.
Then you was meant to play on the decks, and you were both itching to get on like little naughty school children.
Yeah.
Like, we want to go. Then like you couldn't work it out between you both because you were both so excited about the whole thing. And before we go, your fascination with cars.
Cars. Okay.
What I find really interesting about all my mates in music and all the people who have done great things, and I've got this sweeping analogy of you all. No matter what you all did, no matter what you do, you will make a success of it and you will be good at it. And there's just something like with creating great tunes, great music, you're just good at what you do, right? Your fascination with cars and what you do, because I think people will love what you do.
So before, we're talking probably 82, something like that. I used to work in a garage in Hackney, and we used to repair. We used to break Triumph Stags. You know, the old classic British kind of open top sports car. And I'd worked I worked for them for a little while. Then I went to work for British Leyland for a while. It was all Montegos or whatever it is, Maestros or whatever it was. And then I got out of the car game altogether. And then a few years later on, 88, the whole music thing kicked in. But all of our mates, we all had a Triumph Stag, and people said, "Oh yeah, we'll get another one day. We'll buy another one." Anyway, I bought one about 4 or 5 years ago, and I'd gone back to. I was teaching in prisons then, teaching music production then, and I'd bought this Triumph Stag. Started posting a few pictures on Facebook about it and stuff like that. And then other people started asking me, can you do a couple of jobs for me? And I thought, you know what, I can give the teaching up in the prison. And I opened up a little workshop, and that's what I do. I restore and repair Triumph Stags.
Because it's hard to pin you down because you're so into it. And
I do like it, yeah. I do like it. It's good, yeah.
Because sometimes, like, I'll phone you up and say, I've got gigs and stuff like that for you, or like, will you come and do a podcast, or can you do this? And you love doing it, didn't you?
Yeah,
you absolutely love doing it.
Well, if you know what the old saying goes, if you can do something that you like, you'll never work a day in your life. And, and I've been lucky enough to have two things in my life.
Because you know what it is, like I have visions of like people getting older, and like just finding these things that like are therapeutic to them and that they absolutely love doing, that are a real passion, and that's what I get from you when I talk to you about when with your cars, what it means to you.
Yeah, it is like that. I mean, I think. I mean, before the whole stag thing came in, I was doing, like you've got like mid-century furniture, and I had a little business where like big station clocks, like the big gents old clocks and stuff like that, and I'd restore them. But that again was like the therapeutic thing.
I love
just something to get you away from what you do every day, and just and especially if it's something a little bit creative as well.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, because we never touched on it, and I'm glad you mentioned it. And I know you as a teacher in prisons of music. How important was that to you to pass your knowledge on and help others?
Oh, it was great. I mean, one I never ever thought that I would end up working in a prison due to being in prison and Borstal when I was a kid. But it was brilliant, and the prison did say to me, "Listen, don't tell people who you are when you go in there." I was like, "Okay." I've gone into the canteen one day, and this guy's gone, "You're the DJ, aren't you, mate?" Right? And I've gone, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." And he went, "No, you are. You're Ellis D." And I was like, I couldn't hide it, and so it soon went round the prison, and we used to have a great class, and people just everyone wanted to get in on it. A lot of the music was the grime and stuff like that, but and like they'd be coming out with all the gangster talk and all this and the back, and I go, "Guys, listen, you can't be having, all that talk in there. And they go, why not? I said, because the prison won't have it,
Yeah.
And I said, can you imagine, if they'd done a little documentary on television about, prisons, and there's you guys singing about, there was one guy who said, yeah, got the shells in the bag, right? And I'm going, no, stop.
Yeah.
And he said, what? I said, shells in the bag. He goes, yeah, we could be at the seaside. I said, well, I'll tell you what, if you back that up afterwards, then we got a couple of cornettos, right? I'll let you have that line in there. But apart from that, you're not putting it in there.
Yeah.
But it was great. We'd have, on a Friday, we'd have Banger of the Week. Because normally they'd do it on headphones. But then I'd get the speakers out on a Friday and they'd all be playing Banger of the Week. Some were not so bangers, others were pretty good. But they did love, they loved it.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
And there's some people in there with real good talent. There was one guy, I can't remember his name, but he was brilliant. In fact, a few of them were brilliant. But I just think some of those guys earning so much money that there was one guy and I said, oh, you're going to still do music when you get out? I said, because you've got real talent for it. He said, oh, I'll probably go back to drug dealing. I'm like, man, you've got talent here. I said, look at Stormzy. I said, he probably used to sell a bit of something back in the day. Do you know what I mean? But he's made the crossover now, look, and he doesn't even have to nearly go near any of that, does he? You know? I said, look how much money he's earning, That could be you if you tried.
Yeah, and full well that music can save you and take you on new paths, and that's the beauty of
look, music has taken both of us to places we would never have gone.
We?
And
the thing with music and creativity is like the amount of doors that it opens to other creative things and other paths in life and other connections and other relationships. Roy, we could talk forever.
We could.
Like, we could really talk forever because there's just like so much all of the time to go through. But yeah, don't stop. Don't even contemplate stopping because like you've got a heritage and a history to share with other people.
Thank you. Well, thank you to everyone for supporting me along the way, for both of us, supporting both of us along the way, because it's been an amazing journey, and I'm sure we'll carry it on for. Thank you, Dan.
I love you.
Thank
mate.
you. I love you too.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.